Okay, so just first things first, we're trying to make a dice program, right?
Right.
Okay, so in order to get dice to work, what do I need?
Variables.
Yeah, probably. Let me get the dumbest version of dice working. So I think
Oh, randomizer.
yeah, the kind of dumbest thing I need, like first thing off the bat, is I need some kind of random thing, right? Just like random processing.
Right. Mhm.
I don't know.
There you go.
There's some like stuff here.
Mhm.
I'm just gonna grab like this line because that looks like it's making something random.
Mhm.
So I'm just gonna copy it. I'm gonna throw it in here. And it's like, oh, you're not using R.
Let's use
Uh,
R.
yeah, what the hell is R? So what this line does is float says in the computer we're gonna make a box
Mhm.
that we're gonna put decimals in.
Right.
And then R, the float R, is saying name that box
Mhm.
R. And then this other thing about random 50 is rolling a random number from 0 to 50, and then it's going to store that into the box named R.
Okay.
So then my next thing I want, now that I've like got it, generating a random number, the next thing I need to do is get it put out someplace,
Yeah.
right? So there's a couple ways to do that. I'm just going to try print R.
Sure.
And this is the simultaneously the hardest thing and the easiest thing about computer science.
Mhm.
The hardest thing is like bringing yourself to type something that might not work.
Yeah.
And the thing that gets students through computer science is once they realize that it doesn't matter if it doesn't work, just type some damn thing
Right.
and try it. Like print R might not work. I don't know. Well,
Well, that's for the
my
command, right?
window's freaking blank, right? But down here I've got 30.723.
Mhm.
Okay, so that
So
gives
weird.
me like, okay, so now I know I have a couple more tasks, right?
Mhm.
I need to get rounding.
Right. Or we could just use integers instead.
Oh yeah, I could do this maybe. I could, instead of having a float, I could make an intar.
Right.
Yeah, so what the heck? Type mismatch? So what's going on here is I said I'm gonna make a box that's gonna get an integer put into it. I'm calling that R. And then I'm saying, and put into that box the result of random 50.
Mhm. Oh, and it's because it's not an integer.
Yeah, random 50 is a float. So it's like, well,
Okay.
you gave me, like, you said you wanted an orange and you gave me a lime.
Right.
What the heck do I do with this? So you just need to make it fit. And so there's a couple ways to make it fit.
Mhm.
One of them is you could be like, maybe rounds the thing.
Would that affect the randomness though?
I don't know. Maybe. Should go read it. Oops, wrong
I mean, that
window.
wouldn't be a huge deal.
So
It's
we
a
like
simple program.
processing. Well, it might be a big deal if you were using this for something that people would get
Right.
mad at if it didn't
Yeah.
work, right? Like if I was encouraging you to write this for the D&D club, I would like
They're
you're
gonna
gonna
want
want this
some.
to be fair.
Absolutely.
Because if it never comes up one, you're kind of robbing the game of something interesting. So like round just rounds to the nearest decimal. Okay. Random, if you read here, it says it returns values between 0 and the number starting at 0, not including the end. So I think if it rounds to the closest thing, only stuff between 1/2 and 0 is going to get rounded to 0. But stuff between 1/2 and 1.5 is going to get rounded to 1.
Okay.
So it seems like there's more stuff getting rounded to 1 than there is
Mhm.
getting rounded to 0.
But we wouldn't want 0 anyway.
Yeah, but I don't want 0 to come out of the dice anyway.
But that is still a
But it's
problem.
still a possibility, right? So I might be like, I don't know. Maybe a round's not the right thing. Or,
we could make a range.
yeah, we could make a range. So we could go from like minus 0.5 to 6.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And I guess I want to go to 6.5,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Yeah.
that there's a thing one wide at each. Now if I hit go, maybe I get like, okay, so 4, 2, 2, 4, 1. Basically, I'm making sure that it comes up 0 and, oh wait, that it comes up 6 and, oh,
Okay.
yeah, so there's a problem with 0, right? I don't want it to come up 0. Right, because I want it to be
we don't, but you put negative 0.5 in there.
Oh
So
yeah,
you
that
should
was just
expected
me.
that.
Yeah, it was totally expected. I just
Okay.
did something stupid, right?
Okay.
So there's two kinds of errors that can happen here too. There's the computer kicks you the like, you know,
Sure.
error in the compiler, like, dude, that's not a function, or type mismatch, or whatever. Those errors happen. There's also the other error that's on the other side of the computer. That's the like, oh, I'm dumb. Like, it's very faithfully doing what I told it to do, and what I told it to do isn't what I wanted it to do.
Right.
So we call those logic errors.
Okay.
So now I think this is probably more or less working. So that was an option. Another option that I could have used is there's another. So the other option is that you could do what's called a typecast. Let's see, and I wanted things between 1 and 6, right? So the typecast forces rounding down. Basically, it just says, okay, you gave me a float, I'm going to forget all the crap that's not the integer and just force it into the integer box.
Way more appropriate.
Yeah, seems probably easier. So 1 up to 6 will give it, so the random part there is going to output something between 1.000 and 6.9999. And so if I forget the decimal, I'll get something between 1 and 6.
Okay.
And then I don't really want it to print, right? I want it, so I think I'm good with rounding. The other thing I wanted it to do was to get it in the little window, right?
Right.
Because having it down here in the console is not that. Like, processing does a thing. It draws a picture.
Yeah. We should make a picture, yeah.
So, I don't know. I want it to get it to display text in the window, right? So, like, I don't freaking know.
Other classic text commands.
Yeah, maybe. Let's just try it. And that's, either Google it or just try it. I don't care which. Okay, so now it's like, it expects parameters like int, float, float.
You gotta specify where it's at.
Nice, good. So let's put it someplace. Cool, very faint too. Modify some typesetting. So if you go to the API and read some typesetting stuff, you're like, all right, text command. Okay, and typesetting stuff is going to be down here. So you can use any of these commands on it. Pick one. I'd probably, let's see, maybe align it a little bit to get it so that the point that it's drawing at is more in the middle of the screen.
Yeah.
Right. So if I do, if I look at kind of the X and Y, right? Those are the X coordinate and Y coordinate of the text, right? So if I put in width over 2 and height over 2, it should move to the middle of the screen, right?
But because it's not centered, it'll still be off. Right?
Yeah. So you're like, well, it seems like it's more or less in the middle of the screen.
It's close, but you can kind of tell.
Yeah, it's so if you wanted to if you wanted to be absolutely sure, right? You'd be like, let me use a line to check. Right. So if I want a line, I want it at let's see, 0, comma, height over 2, comma, width, comma, height over 2. So what's that going to do?
So it's going to start at, so x and y, so that'd be in the middle, and then half the height, and then the furthest end of the width, and then half the height again. So we just go right across. Got it. Okay.
And that's the kind of thing where having a piece of paper to like draw the window box and like figure out the coordinates can sometimes help. So that's the kind of horizontal line across the middle of the screen. And if I wanted a vertical line through the middle, I'd do width over 2, comma.
Oh, right. Critical thinking. I mean, I would guess 0.
Good.
Just because that's what was in it.
Yeah,
before.
totally. Use the pattern, like recognize the pattern.
Yeah.
Totally fine. And like, oh, maybe this works. Let me try it. Oh, it only goes halfway.
Right.
Okay, so I want the second one to go this. And it's pretty forgiving of you messing around with it. And so it's kind of, yeah, my text is a little off center. And this window's ugly.
Yeah.
Right? So these are things that you should be able to fix, right? So you get something working, hack it together, then go back and realize which things you didn't need.
Right.
So I don't really need this print line anymore. So I'm just going to comment that out. My 2 diagnostic lines, I'm going to comment those out. If I need them, I can comment them back in. I might even put in a like comment about the diagnostic lines. Be like, right? Be like, I intended to comment these out, but that's where they are if I need them. Right. That way, if I have 45 friggin' lines in here, I know which 2 are the diagnostic lines.
Okay, cool.
That kind of makes sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Will that get you started?
I think so. I think that's good.